Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pressing Matters. I'm Scott. Thank you for tuning in today and thank you for your support. Today I get to talk about one of my favorite jazz albums of all time, and that is the Bill Evans Trio, Sunday at the Village Vanguard. It has just been reissued in a new edition from Kraft OJC, Original Jazz Classics. It is mastered by Kevin Gray at Coherent and pressed at RTI. I have another edition of the album, the Alto Analogue, to make some comparisons to. And I'll tell you all about that in a second. Before I get started, if you are new and haven't already, please consider subscribing. We are almost at the end of the year. I have a goal of 10,000. I would love to reach it, and your help is much appreciated. Just hit like, subscribe, and notification, and you'll be sure to get notified of any new content that comes up. So thank you so much for doing that. Also, this and other releases in the Original Jazz Classics series, as well as Blue Note Classics, Blue Note Tone Poets, the Contemporary series, the Acoustic Sound series are all listed in the Pressing Matters Amazon storefront. It's listed in every description box, so check that out, and your patronage is much appreciated, so thank you for doing that. Sunday at the Village Vanguard was my gateway into jazz. I remember when I was starting to get into audiophile releases, I always saw this album featured, and I was like, I gotta try this album. It has such a great reputation. I finally picked up an edition from Alto Analogue years ago, decades ago, and it's been my go-to ever since. This album is so easy to assimilate for someone that's just getting into jazz. As a matter of fact, I named it as one of the top 10 jazz albums for beginners. I have a video on that if you'd like to check it out. And I also reviewed its companion album, which is called Waltz For Debby, which was also released by Original Jazz Classics. And I compared that edition to an earlier Analog Productions edition. I'll leave a link above and below for that review as well. But I'm very, very pleased with the Original Jazz Classics reboot. I think it is excellent. And this one is highly anticipated and really welcome. Previous pressings of this album are all very expensive at this point. The Alto Analogue can go for $100 or more. The Analog Productions 2x45 is astronomical. The Bill Evans box set is extremely expensive. And the MoFi one-step is extremely rare and very, very expensive. So an affordable edition of this, mastered by one of the best in the business, is very welcome. The Alto Analogue was a record that was my go-to for many years. This is how that looks. It's mastered by Nick Webb. It doesn't have a lot of details about where it was pressed, but it is pressed very well. And honestly, I didn't think it could be bettered, but I had no comparisons at that point. I also bought the one step, and it's one of the few records, and don't kill me for this, it's one of the few records I left sealed. The reason is because after all the hoopla over Abraxas and the fact that this was also extremely limited, and the fact that I had the Alto Analogue, I was like, I'm just going to leave it sealed for now. And months went on and I forgot about it, and I never actually opened it. And now, to tear the shrink on this would cost me several $100s because the value would drop. This is going for in the $1,000 range or more. So I'm just going to hold off on that. I really had thought maybe I'd open the shrink for this, but I checked the Discogs prices and I was like, nah, I'm not going to do it. And it's really not necessary and unfair because it's a cut at 45. And I'm just kind of reviewing this as compared to the Alto Analogue. So sorry for the interruptions. There's like tree sawing going on and guests coming in and out of the house. So it's almost Thanksgiving. There's a lot of activity going on around here. The Bill Evans Trio at this time consisted of Bill Evans on piano, Paul Motian on drums, and Scott LaFaro on bass. If you notice on the covers of Sunday at the Village Vanguard, they say featuring Scott LaFaro. The reason this happened was because, unfortunately, Scott was killed in an accident only 11 days after this was recorded in 1961. Bill and Riverside decided to arrange the track order to feature Scott LaFaro as a tribute to him. So on Sunday at the Village Vanguard, you do get a little bit more Scott LaFaro solos. So there's a lot of bass solos that are featured on the album, probably more than would be in a normal balance of the trio if this event hadn't happened. The magic of this trio can't be overstated. Even Bill Evans said that after Scott LaFaro passed away, he had to take time off. It was a long time before he could even put together a new trio, and he never felt like he could recapture the magic of this trio. This record's been talked about many times. I'm not going to go into the details about it, besides the fact that it is considered one of the 10 best jazz albums of all time. Certainly one of the best live jazz albums of all time. I nominated it in my 10 best jazz albums for beginners because it was such a easy gateway into jazz for me. I'll leave a link above to the review I did, 10 best jazz albums for beginners, because that is the journey I took, and this is one of the key albums that got me into jazz. If you don't have this in your collection, I highly suggest you check this one out. The Alto Analogue is an all-analog pressing, obviously. Oops, this one. It's mastered by Nick Webb. I'm not sure where it's pressed. I love this edition of this album. It was my go-to. I thought it sounded beautiful. I still do. It does sound a little different than Kevin Gray's new cut, and I'll tell you in a couple of ways how it differs. Kevin's offers a little more open window onto the venue. You get a better sense of being there. The little details in the background, which are really unique to this album, really give you the impression of being in a small jazz club. The voices in the background, the tinkling of glasses, kind of give you the ambiance of being in the Village Vanguard. The small group of people that you hear clapping, it all adds up to an immersive experience, and it is a touch more immersive on the new one. I think with Kevin's new setup, which is much more refined than probably what Nick Webb used, as well as having access to the master in his case, and we're not quite sure what Nick Webb was given access to, maybe a copy tape, but it does sound like this new original Jazz Classics is closer to the original master tape for whatever reason. Other things I noticed that were brought out in Kevin's version are the articulation of the piano notes. On the Alto Analogue, they're slightly rounded in an attractive way, but on Kevin's, it's a little more clear every strike, and never at the expense of musicality, of course. But there is more clarity on Bill Evans' piano. There is more clarity on the little details of Scott LaFaro's bass. And in the cymbals and the drums, the shimmer and decay of the cymbals on this is beautiful. Very, very fine. It just has a finesse about it, a refinement that really isn't there on the Alto Analogue, good as it is. Is it a major upgrade over the Alto Analogue? I'd say it is definitely an upgrade, but it's not dramatic. I could easily live with the Alto Analogue. If you have that pressing, you probably don't need to upgrade. But if you're a big fan of this album, or you don't already have it in your collection, this is the ticket, because all other pressings are very expensive, and this is done extremely well. It may not equal a 45 of it, but for someone that just wants a 33 of this classic album, this is the way to go. The pressing was good, but not the best I've had from RTI, and I'll tell you why. The bulk of the music is fine. What really bothers me on these last two, like Waltz For Debby and this, are for some reason they're not able to get a clean lead out groove. And you may think that's trivial, but it's not. It happens in the last seconds of music. You start to hear a white noise, and then it gets louder as the lead out groove goes. The reason this is a problem to me is you're immersed in this spellbinding performance. If you hear this right and reproduce properly, you feel like you're in the venue. And that happening right after this spellbinding performance is detrimental. It takes you out of it. It reminds you, oh yeah, I'm listening to a record. It's a minor thing, but really it isn't. For a $40 reissue, it should be perfect. And for some reason, they're not getting this part right. I ordered a replacement. I will let you know if that pressing has this as well. If you already have this in your collection, you've just picked it up, I'd love to know how that is on your pressings. I'd like to know if there are clean ones out there, or if this is affecting the whole run. Is it like a make or break thing? No, it's not, because the bulk of the music is perfectly clean and quiet. So it's just something that bothers me personally, but there's no denying that this is a superior edition of this record. I love it. I love the jacket as well. The jacket was done really well. The reproduction of the photograph is perfect. The sepia toning is accurate and great. And they actually went with a nice matte textured finish for the jacket. And this is beautiful. A beautiful tip-on jacket. Original labels. The whole thing. Really, it's a record that if you don't have in your collection, if you're just starting to get into jazz, or if you've never picked it up before, this is the edition to get. I think it's wonderful. It is listed in the store if you want to check it out. And as always, if you use the links that I provide, you are helping the channel, and it is greatly appreciated. So thank you so much for doing that. But until next time, I'm Scott for The Pressing Matters. Have a great day.